So this is going to be part 2 of the Michael S. Heiser wrong series it might turn into. I hope that he actually finds this somehow and gets this information and then tries to contact me and see if we can't get together on some information here that I'm about to share with you. That doesn't take very long. And each little part can be substantiated. I don't want to have to diatribe like crazy, but you will hear me do it a few times. I could just say the complete phrase out, and he, being a scholar, would probably get a lot of what I said and pull it in. And being a linguistics man himself, he should already know this information. And maybe he just hasn't put it together for himself, or he's denying it. But I see this video and it says, who is Satan in the book of Job? And he tries to have the apologetic standpoint that this isn't really Satan, it's just an adversary. Well, we're always taught that Satan means adversary in the Bible. And you don't put the name Satan on anybody except for the guy that we're talking about as being the devil. You wouldn't do that. You wouldn't call a common man or a leader of a country Gabriel and put into question the fact that Gabriel was an angel, or was he just a king of a country? Right. So, Michael, let's look at some information that is actually in Scripture, in the book that you've studied for so many years. So many years. Let's look at this that I've actually just put as the comment here on this Sentinel Apologetics. Here's a guy who loves your work. And by the way, I love your work too, because I get information out of it like crazy. It's funny, now that I've gotten so deep into this, Gnostic apologetics actually seem to stumble themselves right into the mud puddle of truth constantly. And so I'm just going to read off what I put here, and it's a little small for you there in the screen, but the question is why is Satan allowed to be in God's presence there? Because of all the, that's just not, and everybody realizes that's BS. That this is some weird story, or what goes on in Job. What is this thing in Job? And by the way, Job is the only time in the Bible where Satan actually causes any deaths or does anything. I believe it's 11. If you really dig deep in the Bible, maybe you can count 12, which is a sacred number. But let's look at something else. How about the fact that God kills millions and actual whole groups of people in the name of trying to steal a land? We'll get into that in a second. Let me see if I can straighten this up real quick. Is that any better? Slightly. That's better for you. Okay, so, well, here's my stance on it. Satan was allowed to be in God's presence here because adversary implies equal but against, as in yin or yang. Satan was allowed to stand there with God because at one time in this whole ideology they have throughout the Bible, it was really somebody who was yin and yang with this God that we're talking about. So we need to figure out this God that we're talking about and which one at the time, because the Hebrews flip and flop so crazy. Most people look at it as they were always with God and occasionally they flopped. But if you actually read the story, they flip and flop like crazy. And never seem to be worshiping the one that really wants them to. They're always flop, and he keeps trying to get them back to flip back. But it doesn't take long before they flop. And then they spend a long time flopping and very little time flipping. I think Heiser will agree with this too, if he, going through his studies, especially after what I have to come to light shortly. So I say, even in the apology is what meant by Satan. They stumble into the mud puddle of truth by using adversaries if God was unable until Revelations, because Revelations is finally whenever they cast him down and do all that and fight with the dragon but can't overcome. It's in the video that's here actually, that apparently has much power, this Satan guy. but a lot less killing and genocide and child sacrifice than one of the two of these adversaries that it's supposed to be. And the one that's supposed to be good is the one that seems to do more killing and want the child sacrifice, which seems to be weird in the Bible, but we digress. Omnipotence comes into question whenever, instead of making the nomadic desert area into Eden again, poof, and now you don't have to steal a land or anything. Instead, he wants them to cause genocide in order to steal someone else's ancestral land because of a dream a trespasser had. Jacob was going through someone else's land whenever he had this dream of a house called Beth El. And this is supposed to be the house of God, where Beth is house and El is God, which is another name for the constellation of Virgo. We come to find out now after thousands of years as house of bread or whatever, but it's Virgo. The virgin is not in, they don't have women. Boy, they've detested women ever since a woman grew from a rib and ate from a magic tree because the talking snake told her to. Women have been looked at as being bad in this religion. And so even to this day over in Persia, ladies are just looked at as being, shut up and keep clothed. Anyhow, I digress again. The stairway to heaven there, which is not in his homeland, was probably a ziggurat, and one that he jealously coveted a neighbor's possessions in them wanting to do it. And the Hebrews from then on start jealously coveting someone else's property, which I believe is against one of the commandments. In fact, is probably in there straightforward is that you shouldn't be doing it, but then he tells them to do it. This shows you that we're talking about different gods flip-flopping and telling them what to do, and they're all wishy-washy. That one God's saying, no, it's like an angel on one shoulder and a devil on the other. Let's look into this more. Jacob jealously coveted a neighbor's possessions, and Jacob was renamed Israel. Well, let's cut through some stuff here, Mr. Heiser, real quick. The ancient Phoenician word for the wandering star, which is planets now, people know, and a god to some, was Israel. There's that L again, but let me clarify and restate that statement, because it has as much power as your entire book apparently portrays. The ancient Phoenician word for the wandering star that we know today as Saturn, the Romans named the planets, and it was a god to them. They were named after the planets. Even the Sumerians had gods. Everybody had, gods as being planets. The Phoenician word for the planet Saturn was Israel. This is known by Berosus and a few other guys. I'm sure you know this information and that it's been put out there and you know it. But let's go on. Abraham left the gods of creation and the flood as attested in Joshua 24:2, whenever he says that Abraham's parents, Terah, and their forefathers lived on the other side of Euphrates and worshipped other gods. And we're led to believe that so the God of Noah, who had just recently passed away, everyone had forgotten about that and was doing idol worship, or whatever apologetics try to say. But during Noah's lifetime, and even during his children's who had been on the boat, they were totally worshiping other gods and idol worshiping, that they don't remember the rainbow and the whole 9 yards. That's just a crazy thought. That during Noah's lifetime, he only died like 6 years before Abraham left. If you read out things, and apologetics know this, he probably knows this dating. So let's go with this. So they worshipped other gods. So this would have been the God of the flood of Noah. But then again, he says your forefathers, and that we're led to believe that all the begetting that you have before Noah, Methuselah and all the ones before that, all the way back to Adam and Eve, and the God of creation was under this other gods. It says it right there. It said them and their ancestors worshipped other gods. It doesn't say Noah and a few people, but Adam and Eve. No, 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 no. He doesn't even claim that. He tells you that they were worshiping other gods. Look it up. It's enlightening. You can't read a bunch of bullshit into it. You can only read what it says. Joshua 24. Read it on down. It tells you. And then it tells you that they're sitting in the Canaanite land and they have a chance to go back and worship the ones of their forefathers or steal the one that they're in. And they decide to steal the one that they're in. Read it. Read Joshua 24. You know, I'm not sure you've read it through with an open mind, Mr. Heiser, but let's continue. Or anybody that's listening, please look through this with me. You know, pull open your Bible, bring it there. And so Abraham, whenever he left there and came into a new land and planted a tree, which is a Sumerian thing, by the way, and Heiser should know this after trying to go into the Sumerian thing a little bit, just enough to try to refute Sitchin. And by the way, again, I'll tell you that Anunnaki actually would mean those from sky came down to heaven, from heaven came down to earth. Key is earth. The Anunna gods were in heaven. The Anunna gods on earth would be there. I mean, it's just plain and straightforward. You tried to cut somebody down right after they died, and that's pretty disgusting. So I'm not trying to cut you down. I'm trying to cut down what you believe, because you believe that somehow this is some kind of God thing, and I'm going to show you now what the truth is in all your little book that you have there, and the little book that everybody's been trapped under for thousands of years, that the Romans helped to make. Let's look at this up. So Abraham left the gods of creation in the flood, as attested in Joshua, and he began worshiping El, the Canaanite god. Though it's been changed in the Bible, and they changed the word Lord, and Baal is Lord, by the way, and Baal is the Canaanite El's God's son, and he would be probably well aware of this pantheon that goes on, and the fact that El is Saturn, and his son, who was Zeus, if you remember Greek lit, is the one that ate all of his children, and Zeus was the only one that, by his mom hiding him or whatever, that he didn't get eaten. You remember this story right from Greek lit. And the Canaanite worship of Baal is the way that we get the origin of the word cannibalism. If you look it up in the dictionary, it's been taken out. Of course, you know, religion controls everything, and they say that it has something to do with the Caribbean. If it was called Caribbeanism, that would be one thing, but Canaanite Baalism, cannibalism is exactly where it comes from. Exactly where it comes from. El was the god of the patriarchs of Israel, and it's actually what the name Israel means. So anytime you see in the Bible the word Israel, you're actually saying Saturn. That's what you're saying, because El is Saturn. El was the god of the patriarchs, and you can prove it by having everyone's name in the Bible with El, and El means God. When they tell you what somebody's name means, everybody's name in the Bible is not really a name. It means God will prevail. Well, what's his name? Well, it's Jerubel. Well, what is El? El is the part that means God. Oh, wait, so El is God? Ta-da! A ding! Let's check this out. Let's look at the prophets that tell you everything. Who are they brought by? Are they brought by Yahweh? No. It's Ezekiel, Nathaniel, Elisha, Ishmael, and of course Israel. El is the god of the patriarchs. There are 232 times in the Hebrew Bible that God is referred with an El epitaph, such as El Elyon, ELohim, El Shaddai. There's a few more. And this means God of the mountain, God of the most high, God the mightiest, God the everlasting. And in all these cases, the word God would be the word El. El is the God of the Hebrew people through the Bible. The council of God is known as the ELohim. This is getting disgusting. You are a linguist. You know this. Ruled by elders. Elders are the elders of the church. Where do you get the word elder from? The place that they worship in is called a temple. 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 It can get just disgusting, this L that's in your face. And for 2,000 years, people have been under a blur of trying to apologize for bullshit that's straightforward. Right here, he tells you they start worshiping different gods. What are the gods they worship? Well, they're in the Canaanite land. Well, what are the Canaanites' God called? Well, they're called El. Well, it looks like the gods in the Bible are called El too. I mean, come on. Come on. The ELohim are ruled by elders. Baal uses electricity. It's where you get El from. The holy beings that come down and shine their grace are called angels. And their names are Ariel, your name, Mr. Heiser, Michael, Raphael, Azazel, Gabriel, Gadriel, and so on. El is Saturn, known to the Chaldees as stir, just the 4 letters stir. Rome always puts the A off in things, and they always put us on the end of things, like Zeus is Z. Just the letter Z looks like an electricity mark, doesn't it? But then they put us on the end of it, Zeus. Saturn is known as Saturnus. But called by the Greeks, which are in lieu with the Romans, satyr or satyr. The satyrs are the people that had the goatskin pants on, and these people at this time still wore barbaric goatskin pants, and the Romans and stuff were already making textiles, and they thought that they were so barbaric, and later on they got shown disgustingly as like half goat people and things like that. You're very familiar with this, the theory of Fawn and Pan and all of these gods that were Canaanite people. In fact, Kronos, who is Saturn, was a Phoenician. Kronos the Phoenician, if you ever remember Greek lit. Anyhow, let's continue here. Satyr, Satyr is the reason for the day Saturday. Gods were given worship days back then, which is the Hebrew day of worship. If you remember in the Bible, and Heiser knows this well, that Saturday was the day that they worshiped their gods, and it got changed by Rome into Sunday whenever they adopted in Christianity. And why? Because, well, Jesus is the sign of Mithra, the sun god, and so he's worshipped on Sunday, and he was the new and everlasting God that Rome had built up by redoing the Bible, and therefore you end up with sun god worship, or we worship on Sunday, being a total blaspheme to what God said his day was in the original Old Testament. Heiser knows this very well. You might as too, and here who are listening, but Saturday was the original day of worship, and so that shows you who are they worshiping. Well, they're worshiping Saturn. Who's Saturn? That's Saturn. Come on, people. It's linguistics. It's real simple, and Heiser should have this a long time ago. And I think he stares at the camera knowing this shit and sits around apologizing for somebody else's religion. It's just disgusting. But here we go. Or you are just in complete denial, but you can't deny this string of thought that's put here. The names. It's disgusting. Now, they also worshipped a little bit of Ea from Sumeria, the home of the Aryans, Sumeria. And these people believe in Ea, and so you see Isaiah, and things like that in the Bible too, but they never are really worshiping that very much. You can see El. El is eating everything up. And so Mithra was a Persian god, and that's where they get the idea of Jesus coming back as being the Savior of man, born on December 25th, has 12 disciples, and all the ideas for that. Look up my video on Mithra. You might be surprised, but we're just attacking the Old Testament, and since the New Testament's built on the Old Testament, then you can't build it for anything off of it. They try to blend it together, and actually they're separate works altogether, aren't they, Mr. Heiser? Aren't they? The Persian word for Saturn was shaitan, known in Hebrew with the same sh sound for an S. Hebrew S's have a little mark over them. He knows Hebrew. Heiser should know this, where it has the sh sound, like in their word for sun, Shamash, which was the Sumerian god of the sun. The exact same. Shamash, or Kimash. Isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, that is. Anyhow, the Hebrew day of worship was Saturday. That's Saturn's day. The Persian word was shaitan, SH sounding in the Bible. The Hebrew word in the Bible for Satan has a SH. It looks just like Satan, but it's got that mark which says it's so it's Shatan, right? Shatan. And in Latin, that would actually be Satan without the H sound. So once again, Michael S. Heiser was wrong. Micah L. Heiser is wrong. And the God of the Patriarchs in the Bible is Satan. And people are waking up to this after a 2,000-year-old fog of a hex put on. What's a hex? It's an old devil worshipping thing, isn't it? Hexes? Well, ironically, look at the Jewish flag that's built on this. Doesn't it have the hex star on it? Yeah? Hmm? Oh, and just to keep poking, the Star of Your God Rimfan that they were worshiping and not worshiping the true God? Look up Rimfan. Who is that? That's Saturn too. Oh, it just keeps leading back to this L and Saturn thing. And that's who they worshipped. And that's the fog mankind is trapped under now. This God of sacrifice and lying. And Jesus told you that who they were worshiping was the devil, and he was a liar and the father of it. And you wonder what he meant by that till you come up with information like this. Check out some of my other videos on this. But Michael, respond. Please respond. Let's get together. Talk a little bit.